everybody to 20 Question Tuesdays. Make sure everybody's here. I hope so. I hope so. How's everybody doing? Welcome to 20 Question Tuesdays. It's good to have you here. I'm on nice and early so that we can get some questions for the show before we go full on live. Don't forget, the fight is still on, everybody. Last night we raised a bunch of money for the ACLU. Woo-hoo! And the week before we did Southern Poverty Law Center. And the week before that we did Austin Justice Coalition. And the week before that, what's up, Jenna? The week before that we did Equal Justice Initiative. So I just want everybody to know that Monday nights I still do half of the proceeds for that. We will be going on soon. Looks like everything's working on Facebook at least. If you are on Twitter or you are on... Oh, looks like we got some people on Twitter as well. That's good stuff. Kate's here. Hi, Kate. How you doing? Kate, you have already submitted your question, and I dig it. So we got another, 5 or so minutes to get questions for the workshop today. And love to hear what kind of questions you guys have. All right, let's see here. Got 5 more minutes on that. Check the other timer. Like I know what I'm doing. Anyway, it's really fun doing these 20 Question Tuesdays. Please let me know if you're on YouTube or if you are on whatever you're on. Jana, good to have you. Good to have another guitar player and songwriter with us. Jana's got one. You have 10 minutes a day to work on guitar technique. What do you do? Oh, that's a great question. All right. Let's write that one down. Jana. 10 minutes to work. What do you do on guitar? On guitar. I love this question. Who else we got out there? I can't see how many people are on right now without switching to an analytics page. No, I do. I'm analog with how I write down the questions. I'm digital with everything else. It's really cool because I've got, we're going to go live, of course, at 11 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. on the Austin Music Live channel. I'm sorry, Austin Music TV channel, Austin Music TV. But until then, we're going to take a few more questions, make sure we've got some things. So anybody who's out there on any of the different platforms, YouTube, Twitter / Periscope, whatever you got, feel free to ask a question. I'd love to hear from you. It seems to be working. It's pretty cool. My dog Oscar is not impressed. Whatever. That's the way it goes sometimes. But as we're getting set up, I'll make sure both git fiddles are semi in tune. Screen look okay? I got some weird lights going, but hopefully everything's all right with that. If you guys get a chance, just those people who are watching, please go to Twitter and look up Stevie Wonder. And he put up something at like 2 a.m. yesterday or this morning. And it's really, really beautiful. And it's just like you think. People wonder why Stevie Wonder is my biggest musical influence, but he's also my hero and my mentor and a light for the whole world. So please go check out. Hi, Sean. How you doing? Okay, so we got a good-looking thing. We need some more questions, though. Anybody who hasn't asked a question already, give me something. Or we'll just do it live on air. This is such a rock and roll acoustic. I always used to have bluegrass acoustics, right? And just wanted to do, you know, right? And then Lucas Hubbard showed me this, and I was like, what the heck? Just every time I pick up this guitar, I want to play bar chords, and such a rock and roll acoustic. Never had anything like that in my life. And, you know, Bryce was right. Johannes, do you have any tips for one-chord blues songs on lap steel, D and G tuning? Absolutely. I'll tell you what, Johannes. I will start out a little bit in the beginning. What year is that bird? I don't know. It's like a 2018. It's one of the ones from they got they had a bankruptcy, and so they had to just basically sell them off really, really close to cost. And I'm super, super lucky. I know somebody. Johannes, I'm writing down that question. I love it. Tips for D and G tuning. Lap, one chord blues. That's a great question that we can definitely talk about. Blues is definitely one chord. Guilty pleasures musically. ABBA and the Carpenters. I will just tell you right off the bat before we get online with the TV show portion of this. One word. If I'm really going to be honest about my biggest guilty pleasure, it is that I am a Manilow. I'm sorry, those songs are great. Can't Smile Without You, Copacabana. I'm a Manilow. I'm sorry. When I was a kid, my mom used to play his record, and there's just that little bit of nostalgia that sticks with you. I remember, like, you know, jumping up and down on the bed and stuff like that. What do you do when you get a tune in mind, but the words are on the other side of the door? Interesting. I think I know what you mean by that, Lee. Let's see. Uh-oh. Oscar, don't be scared. What do you do when you have a tune, but no words yet? Right, Lee? Is that kind of what you mean? I have a good answer for that. Okay, so Kate Howard, we have one other Manilow in the house. I dig that. I dig that we have a Manilow besides me. Gianna's probably sitting there right now going, oh no. All right, we got the clock running. A couple more questions. Oh, you don't know what you mean by that, Lee? Well, then I'll have to explain it for you. Hey, everybody, before we get on the TV show as well, just going to mention stuff below. You see it all there. Thank you very much. That's all I'm going to say about that. And about 1 minute before the show, 10:58 or something, you're open to Manilow? You need to know where to start at? Start with Can't Smile Without You. I mean, that's just right there. Do you feel a bridge is always a necessity, or does each song have its own rules? That's a great question, Sean, and a good one to answer for you. Does every song need a bridge, or is every song specific? Oh, George, we got George for a question too. Fantastic. Each song have its own rules. Does every song need bridge, or every song have own rules? Like it. All right, George, what do we got for you? Thanks for being there last night for that too. All right. When you're playing a solo, what's going through your mind? Are you thinking of a melody ahead, translated or muscle memory? Okay, cool, sure. Playing a solo, what are you thinking? As if I can think. Are you thinking? Oh, sure, Heather. That's a great question, too. I can get right on that one. Playing a solo, what are you thinking? And that should be enough for the questions for today, folks. If there's any more, I will get them after the show. We'll stay on. But Heather, I'll be able to get yours as well. Translating to the guitar or just memory mess. Thinking of melody. Translating. Or is it just muscle memory? Great questions. Great questions today, everybody. All right, and then Heather. Heather, and I'll hit you all by name in case you go and come back or anything. Any tricks for getting out of the usual go-to progressions? All right, everybody, we'll be online in just a few seconds, and we'll be on the air. Maybe right about now we're going to be on air on Austin Music TV, which is pretty cool. My name is Jeff Plankenhorn, and I am so glad to be here with everybody for 20 Question Tuesdays. Just to make sure everything's working with the feed, I'm going to play a little bit. Just another homesick child, tired of running wild, ready to stand trial, move on. Oh, I'm guilty in your sight, show some mercy tonight. I can't make it through the fight alone. Oh, but oh, now, Lord, don't make it easy. Keep me working till I work it all out. But please, please, just shine enough light on me that I'm free from this shadow of doubt. Keep me out of the shadow of doubt, yeah. That, of course, is a song by my good friend, Mr. Gary Nicholson, from my last EP. And welcome everybody who just tuned in on Austin Music TV for our first episode of 20 Question Tuesdays, where I, Jeff Plankenhorn, get together and people send in questions and we talk about everything music, all sorts of things. We've had some really, really great guests come on as far as verbally and through stuff, but pretty soon, in the next week or two, there's a new feature, and I will be able to have guests split screen with me during 20 Question Tuesdays, and that'll be much more interesting than me just rambling on. But these have been really, really fun, and I appreciate everybody for coming to these things. I really dig it. First started out as a thing for people who just couldn't get out of the house, and now we're just doing great. We're on a bunch of different platforms. We're on YouTube, and we're on Twitter, and we are on Facebook Live, and I got a whole bunch of questions already for this week, so let's get to talking. What do you say? By the way, I've been watching the chat. I can see all the chats from the different, this app Restream is really great. I can see all of the different chats, so it's pretty cool. Anybody who's on YouTube, please say hello. Same with Periscope. We got a bunch of people on Facebook. Quick question. First of all, somebody asked, what's your guilty pleasure? And I, in all seriousness, everybody's got a guilty pleasure. For somebody, it's Jimmy Buffett. For somebody, it's, whoever, a pop band, I recently realized that I actually really like Culture Club. I didn't when I was growing up, but going back to it now, I really, really like Boy George, and I really like Culture Club. Go figure. But those songs are incredible. But the one that I mentioned was Barry Manilow, and that's because when I was yay big, my mom played records for me. There you go. Janice is Neil Diamond. I love it. Feel free to add your guilty pleasure here, Captain into Neil. Neil Diamond. Everybody's got one, right? Yeah, I actually was talking about Michael O'Connor. I'm wearing his shirt right now. Michael O'Connor. Being one of my first guests. So who knows? Maybe we'll even be able to do it within next week. So we can all talk about music, and it should be really fun. ABBA. Perfect. Well, what I said, as we get on, early and get questions for everybody before we are on Austin Music Live, I like to get on and, yay, it's working. Okay. Get questions from everybody and stuff. And my answer was Barry Manilow. Oh, we got it in sync, though? Okay, so now we are real. Everybody is really Blink 182. Fair enough, George. Exactly. Everybody's got one. You got your guilty pleasure. It's your thing. Go for it. Don't sweat it. Jim Croce, nah, I don't know. That's not a bad one. Those are incredible songs. I would say that's a super guilty pleasure. But anyway, I appreciate everybody's guilty pleasures, and don't be afraid to have a guilty pleasure, because you just got to be careful whoever you talk to about it. Backstreet's back, all right, Jana. All right, first question of the day comes from Kate Howard, though before that, she asked, who is my biggest non-musical influence? Before we get into some of the guitar stuff and the songwriting stuff, this is a nice softball to start with as well. As far as reading is concerned, lately, my favorite fiction books are by the Japanese writer Haruki Murakami. Some of you might know the Matt the Electrician song where he says, I am reading the novels of Haruki Murakami. Well, when I heard that song 20 years ago, I was like, who's that? And I asked Bruce Hughes about it, and he said, oh, Haruki Murakami, wrote Norwegian Wood, and he got famous for it, but he has all these incredible books, and he's sort of like Elmore Leonard in that they're really, really incredible stories. I really love 1Q84. That's been a big influence on me that doesn't have anything to do with music. I also am a super closet Shakespeare person, and all my life, ever since high school, I have read complete works of Shakespeare because I'm bored. Like when I get bored, I pick up another, right in the middle. I'm in the middle of As You Like It right now, which is a great one. I think Henry V is probably Henry IV is probably my favorite. So yes, I am a big nerd. I also really, really love reading stuff like Noam Chomsky and Yuval Noah Harari, because I'm politically kind of interested in such things. And I think Yuval Noah Harari is probably going to be the intellectual of our time. I really love his books, Sapiens and Homo Deus. Look up the book Homo Deus. It'll blow your mind. Not an easy read, but really, really fun. So, Kate, I hope that answered your question. Thank you for starting me off with a softball. Jana Pokop, everybody. If you haven't heard her music as well, oh, good. Glad we got a bunch of fans of Bill the Bard here. I'm super happy about that, as in Shakespeare. You didn't get that. Okay, we all like Shakespeare. Okay, cool. All right, great. Best when you see it, but pretty fun to read. Oh, really? Patrick Stewart's been reading the sonnets? Oh, that's really cool. Somebody tried to mess with me because I mentioned something about poetry, and they go, sonnets aren't poetry. And it's like, well, no, sonnets are sonnets, but they are poetry. So, yeah. Jana had a great question. If you don't know Jana Pokop, she's a great songwriter and a bitchin' guitar player and pretty awesome. Her question was, let's say you got 10 minutes to work on guitar in a day. what do you do if you want to work on guitar? Do you want to work on dexterity? Do you want to work on little exercises or something just to keep your hands moving? Which is really, really good. Here's my suggestion. If you only got 10 minutes, make it fun. Don't worry, like, if you've got time to work on scales and stuff, that stuff really, really helps. But you're really not going to get into something in 10 minutes, okay? So in 10 minutes, you know, really, really working up and down the neck with scales, that's great. But I would try picking a solo that you really, really love. And if you got 10 minutes, play it and sing it at the same time, you know? Because if you can sing and play something at the same time, you're just upping your knowledge of how to really understand the guitar. Way more important, in my humble opinion, than vocabulary or scales or anything like that. As soon as you can start putting two and two together between your brain and the physical motion of whatever you're playing, you're going to start making up melodies and just automatically be able to play them without thinking too hard about it. I don't want to think when I play, you know, which will lead me to George's question, and I'll bip around a little bit. So, Jana, if I had 10 minutes to play guitar, I would make sure I wanted to move my hands around, pick something that's not too difficult, keep the blood flowing, keep the hands, you know, moving around the neck. But I wouldn't think to myself, okay, I've got to do this dexterity exercise where I go. I mean, you know, like that's not playing. It's supposed to be fun. Music is supposed to be playing. You're supposed to have fun. And so if I have 10 minutes just to play guitar, I'm going to play whatever just really, really, really feels good. Try and do it with some good technique and, you know, not really squeeze hard. Keep your hands just kind of light on the neck as you move around. And much more than a dexterity exercise, I would say if you just move your hands around and play something you really, really like, or play a solo, or run through the chords on one of your songs, what a wonderful thing to do. So like I was saying, that kind of leads into George's question, and I hope that's a good answer. I mean, I could definitely show you some dexterity exercises, but just like vocal warm-ups, they're great to do, but it's not fun, you know? I would definitely say pick some solo and just start, you know, singing what you play. Sing what you play. Even if you can't sing well, just sing the notes. Da-da-da-da-da. You're going to get better at soloing, and you're going to have fun, and you've spent a few minutes doing something that's a lot more productive, really. You have to know vocabulary. That's what music theory is for, and that's fine. Or you really don't. You can still say sentences if you don't know grammar, because you've done it all your life. It's the same thing. I might know how to say more things with a bunch more chords, but that doesn't mean I necessarily have more to say. George says, okay, what are you thinking about when you're playing a solo? And this has a lot to do with Jana's thing as well. At least what I was saying would be a fun 10-minute exercise. Are you thinking of a melody and translating it to the guitar, or is it just muscle memory? I try my best, and I don't always do this, okay? I try very, very hard to sing everything in my head that I'm playing. So if I'm playing a solo on a song like Teresa, you know, it's Teresa, will you come and play? I've been waiting in this sandbox all day. I need a friend who'll hear just what I say. There's some fun chords, you know. So Teresa, will you come and play? My first album. can't really hear the notes and be able to go. And what's really, really great about singing the notes is you take breaths. So if in my head I'm going, eventually I'm going to have to take a breath. So it's not just notes and 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 which is cool for bluegrass. It's cool for some jazz. But if you're playing a song and people are lilting along, or if you're playing something bluesy, you want pauses because they mean so much. So to answer your question, George, and hopefully I'm answering it, I do kind of just like think melodies in my head from playing over and over and over again on songs, and try to translate them down. And I feel like the best way to do that, if you don't have a ton of experience, is to sing notes. And when I am to sing the notes that I'm trying to play on a solo, when I'm teaching a student via Zoom or in person or whatever, I will say, if you're just starting, I will say, go da 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 da. That lick will be in their head forever once they can sing and play it. And as you try to get better at soloing and you're trying to work on melody, singing it and playing it, can't think of anything. And you also come up with things you wouldn't necessarily come up with because you're not thinking of some finger pattern. You're just kind of having fun with the whole thing. And, hey, wait, my hand moved here, and this works really, really great, you know? All right, Sean, thanks. Appreciate that vote of confidence. I love hearing when people dig what's going on in this, and that I'm actually answering the questions that they're asking. George, I hope that answers your question a little bit. There's a little bit of muscle memory, and it does come over time. But I try and, like, you know, just kind of feel it and compose the melody on the spot. And some songs, the first time I played the melody, when I took the song out and I played it for a show, is exactly the way it stays forever. It's very, very hard for me on certain songs to play certain solos differently. I don't know why, but sometimes you get out there and you go, this is it. This is the way to play this solo. Yep. George, if you want to, give me a message and we can talk about Zoom lessons for sure. I really love doing them because of the fact that I cannot leave Canada right now. The border's closed, so I can't work in Texas and I can't work here. What I can do is give lessons and stuff. So I'm going to be an online musician probably for the next year. Guys are going to get sick of seeing me online. That's for sure. But this is really, really wonderful to be on Austin Music TV and to be working with all of you. Maybe I'll figure out a way to get the chat on the Austin Music TV so everybody can see what I'm talking to. George said, thanks, Jeff. Zoom lessons, I hear. Okay, let's go to another one. We got Jana. We got Kate. Let's switch around to something maybe having to do with songwriting. And Sean, you just chimed in there. Sean asks, does every song need a bridge, or does every song have its own rules? Second part of your question, answered. Yes. Absolutely every song has its own rules. I got one word for you. Dylan. There are Dylan songs that have 10 verses, and the only thing that changes, the words change, but the form stays the same, and then there's a refrain instead of a chorus at the end, you know? Out there on Highway 61 at the end of a verse, right? There's no bridges. There's not even a verse and a chorus. It's just a verse and a refrain, and a verse and a refrain, and a verse and a refrain, and a solo, and a verse and a refrain. That doesn't, follow any standard thing, but he's written literally hundreds of those kind of songs. I will say that certain songs kind of cry for a bridge. And bridges can be a really, really, for those who don't know, you have a verse, which pretty much everybody know what a verse is. Chorus is kind of the thing you sing along with that repeats. The bridge is something that might take you from one place to another, or take you to a different musical place so that you can have a little bit of tension and release when you go back to it later. I like all sorts of different bridges, and if you're having trouble, I like to give this kind of advice with bridges. Bridges don't have to be related in any way to the rest of the song. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Best. It's tough to say best. I'm a little bit of a Stevie Wonder guy. I mentioned that earlier. I'm a big Stevie Wonder fan. He might be my favorite lyricist of all time. But Dylan, yes, up there. Even if you don't like the way he sings, listen to a few other people do his songs, and you all of a sudden go, oh yeah, those are really great. And it depends on which period of Dylan you're listening to. Back to bridges for Sean. Just to extend your question a little bit, definitely I don't personally think every song needs a bridge. I do think that certain songs kind of cry for it. And I experiment with all different kind of bridges because it's fun. Sometimes I will do a bridge that's completely instrumental. Sometimes that has no chords or any relation to the rest. Leonard Cohen, there you go, buddy. For a great lyricist as well. Sometimes I'll do a bridge like in Sleeping Dogs, it's so I let the sleeping dogs out. And the bridge is, oh, oh, oh. And then Scrappy comes in with the guitar. So it's cool. Sometimes you can just take a solo and then boom, that's what the bridge is. Well, I mean, Steve, as I was saying again with the term bridge, think of a bridge. It goes over, from section to section and links them together. It could be a lift as well, like verse, bridge, chorus. It could be something that you just use for a solo. Some people would rather call that like an interlude. A lot of people still call that the bridge. It can be lyrical. It can be musical. It can be whatever. And really think outside the box when you work on a bridge. If you have a really, really, really wordy song, check your bridge and make it something that has like 3 long tones sung, or just ooze. If you have a song that's really, really, really simple and poppy, make it just a musical bridge, make it just a guitar solo, or change the instrumentation on the exact same chords, and all of a sudden you have a little bit of bridge. So a lot of people think, man, this song really needs a bridge, but they think that they just kind of have to go with the standard form of what a bridge is. I love all different kinds of bridges and try really hard to come up with one. Now, if you take a song like my song Home Again, one of the first songs I wrote, the first song on my Plank album, it has no bridge, and it just has one section. And again, like a simpler form of a Dylan tune, it just has switching to G tuning for all the guitar players following along who like to play a lap. Open G, not dobro G. D, G, D, G, B, D. Home Again is, you always like to wander, born a free man. You've been on this road since you don't know when, and you may be more lost now than you've ever been. You will find your way home again. And then the solo's over the same chords. Never felt like that song needed a bridge. It's got 3 verses and a solo, and I just didn't have any more to say. Maybe I should have, but I just didn't think it ever needed it. And that's one of those songs that's really held up over time, and I still get a lot of requests for. No bridge, but a refrain. Thanks again for everybody who's being here right now, and I do want to thank all of my followers on Patreon, and you can look right here for the links right below me. On Patreon, I put out new music every month. One new original and one new cover song every month. All sorts of different kinds of music. It's given me the ability to do full band stuff via satellite. Last month I did something with Scrappy Judd and Fran Christina from the Fabulous Thunderbirds. The month before it was with Kimmy Rhodes. We did some bluegrass. The month before, Sean Pander did some writing. And I really, really enjoy that. So big thanks to my Patreon followers. Follow me everywhere. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, very cool. I found sometimes adding bridges to boring songs I wrote years ago changed them a lot and refreshed them to my ears. I love your advice because it is real and applies to organic music. Thank you so much. Thanks very much, Sean. Dig it too. All right. So, Johannes, who comes quite often, my friend. Nice to see you again, Johannes, if you are here. So you have tips for D and G lap tunes, like one chord blues tunes. Here is my first tip, and it's a really, really, really easy one. So much, whether you are in G or D tuning, if you want to be bluesy, and here I'm going to move this down a little bit so you can hopefully see my guitar a little better, but it might pop more, is around the 3rd fret. I'm not saying you're going to hang around the 3rd fret all the time, but if you're in G and you go to the high D string, that's your 7th. It's bluesy. Right? 3rd fret. 3rd fret on the next string is like a repeat of your D. That's bluesy too. So if you've got a one chord blues tune that's just 3rd fret is your friend. All that stuff right there is kind of off the 3rd fret. And open strings. All 3rd fret. So if you're a beginner, and Johannes, I'm pretty sure you're probably a little bit more, maybe that's a little bit too easy. For the super beginners, 3rd fret is a great place to start experimenting with blues. Move your slide around until you hear something that sounds good. Always try and stay in tune. Do the best you can. Go back, watch the video. The video will be here. Mess around with that. Sorry, it's a little dark. I'll work on the lighting for next week. But my suggestion, if you're working on one chord blues, Johannes, is less is best. Play little licks. Stick to the melody. Those are the things that are going to be really, really, really groovy. You said one chord and blues. That does not mean necessarily to play a lot of notes. A lot of notes feels fun, like, wow, look at what I can do. Not necessarily a thing that is great for the audience to listen to. An audience would rather hear, you know, if it's like blues and it's really grooving and it's moving, you know, just like a lick like that just has a little bit of soul to it, rather than a, you know, it's like, who cares? So my suggestion question, and I don't know if this is really going to help you much, but for one chord blues, and we might have to get into it a little bit more, but Johannes, if you're there, please chime in right now because I can see you on the chat. Hopefully that is answering a little bit of your question. I would say, stick to third fret substitutions, chords, notes, everything around the third fret, and play as little as possible on a blues tune when you want to be cool. Less is best when it comes to the blues. But Johannes, if you have more questions, put it in there because I can see you right there on the chat. Once again, thank you to Austin Music Live for having me for my first time. I hope we've got some people tuning in here. And no matter what level you're at, 20 Question Tuesdays is fun. I get on about 15 minutes early on the platforms and take questions, and then we talk about everything music. We talked about influences outside of music today. We talked about 10-minute workouts when you only got 10 minutes to play, different tunings. Talked about songwriting and bridges, and we talked about keeping solos in your head, etc., etc., etc. We got a couple more questions here, but I think it might be a good time to play something that's maybe, let me think of something that's in, it's really only a couple of chords. There's a Matt the Electrician tune. Matt the Electrician started writing this song. It's on my live album. And just checking to make sure everything's okay still. Looks like we're good. Yep, we're still live. Making sure everything is working. Matt the Electrician came to me and he said, "Hey, I've got this. Always try to be cool." Thanks. Hey, I hope this answers your question. If it doesn't, just go ahead and message me. Because if that's a little bit too basic for you and you want some more, I got time right now. And like I said, I'm having a lot of fun teaching and I'm having a lot of fun doing this kind of stuff. So normally I'm on the road. Right now, no road. Matt the Electrician, Johannes, had this tune that he started writing, and he was playing it on guitar, and he had this little lick. And I was like, oh, man, that'll work great. And he started asking me about where I grew up in Ohio, in a steel town, and started writing this song. And it's like... That's another thing you can do is you can kind of substitute a 5 every once in a while. You can substitute a 3 once in a while. Or when you want to do something on a 1-chord tune. I was born in Ohio. My mom was a gambler. Did not know my daddy. Oh, daddy, please come home. Also, go up the octave. Play everything in a bunch of different octaves. Right? Try going up the octave. Play the same lick up there. See what it sounds like. Harmonize. Anyway, Johannes, I hope that answered your question a little bit. Lee has a question that says, what do you do when you have a tune, but you don't have any words? Oh, what's the name of this song? That's the one I'm looking for. That song is called Cockeyed, and it is on my Live at the Saxon Pub album, song that I wrote with Matt the Electrician. And for more of that kind of stuff, also you could look for, let me just put a couple in here for you, my friend. Let's see. Live at the Saxon Pub and show thanks everybody for bearing with me while I do this kind of chat stuff. I do want this to be interactive, and it kind of is the fun. Let's see, covered. Uncovered. Volume 1 EP. check those out. That'll help a little bit with the kind of laying around one chord and finding some fun stuff to play. Cockeyeds in G, Shadow of Doubt, the Gary Nicholson song, is in D tuning. So hopefully those will help out. Lee, what do you do when you have a tune but no words? Here's my best explanation for this. It's really, really hard for me personally to force inspiration regarding lyrics. And a lot of people might disagree with me who are in this world of making music for a living. But I have a hard time forcing inspiration. I sit down and I free write a lot, which is something that I learned from Michael O'Connor, that I believe he learned from this book called The Artist's Way. Get up in the morning and you free write 3 pages and whatever comes out. Maybe it's just blah, 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 blah. Maybe it's a journal for the day, just what's going on in your life. Maybe a song comes out. Maybe a chorus comes out, whatever. Then you go back and you look at them later. Check them out. That sort of thing. And what's great about that is you'll have the juices flowing a lot. So I like to have things like that. But if I have a melody first, a lot of people, still kind of, I bring this song up a lot in first of all, it's Pride Month, which is super cool. And so, I always love singing Love is Love during Pride Month. The song that's like, whoops! Should be playing this with a flat pick. I had that lick first before I had a song. And I was like, this is a good thing to write a song around. Literally got out of the shower, got a voice memo, put it into a voice memo. I still have it where it's just that, nothing else. And then I started singing. It was a long time before I got the words to Love is Love. I had that stuff ready, and I knew I wanted to sing a song called Love is Love, and it took me a while to put those two together. And eventually it became Jimmy fell hard for Janet. Jamie fell in love with Jay. I wanted a bunch of androgynous names that could be men or women that were in love with each other to start the verse out, to show how silly it is that we don't choose who we fall in love with. We don't choose our orientation. We fall in love. And it's silly to think anything otherwise. And so I wanted to put that in the first part of the song. And then love is love. Great thing about my wife, who is not a musician, I also highly suggest that you listen to people who aren't musicians, because sometimes they might give you great advice. I try really, really hard. My wife gets so much music in her life. I try not to bug her with it. She's seen behind the curtain. She knows the reality of what we do for a living. So she says, so one day I'm playing this and I'm almost finished with the song. I think it was right here where we were in Canada. And I said, I have 2 choruses, honey. And she said, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, I've got one that's like, love is love is love. And then love is love is love. And I said, I got another one that goes, love is love is love is love. Love just has an extra chord in it. And my wife, she goes, I'll just do both. I said, what? She goes, yeah, just do one in one part of the song and one in another. And I was like, so the first 2 choruses I do without the F chord. The last chorus I do as many times as I have offered for Donine to have a co-write on my song, she says no. I'm going to get all the money anyway. So, long answer, Lee, and I know it's a bit of a long answer. I'm being long-winded on it. Sometimes you just have to wait, you know? Sometimes you wait to find a melody or to find words that will fit a melody. It's not an easy thing to just like have a melody and be humming along and then just, boom, come up with something. Try not to force inspiration, but I also try not to sit around and wait for it. I try to just keep active. If I keep my mind active with music, in between shows and in between work part of being a musician, then usually some stuff will come about. You laughing? Because it's Donine? Okay, cool. All right, we're getting close on the questions. Besides, in that song, it's also really great because I get to use the melodica. And then my dog starts howling, and then everybody loves it. All right, so that was a good answer. Thank you very much. We may have room for one more question because we're kind of getting through everything today. So if anybody else has one, while I am, of course, tuning. Yeah. If anybody else has another musical question, we'll probably have enough room for one or two more today. Heather, are you there? Also, again, thanks to everybody who's on YouTube and Periscope and on Facebook. Check out the Austin Music TV channel. They have all sorts of awesome things going along, from music videos of your favorite Austin artists to shows like this one. And I highly recommend you go to check out Austin Music Live on TV. Hi, Heather, you're here. Perfect. Thanks, everybody, again, for this here. You see all these things right here. Thank you. Okay, you had a question. Any tricks for getting out of usual go-to chord progressions? No, I haven't put a sonnet to music. It'd be interesting to have a couplet at the end of... sorry, Heather, 1 second. Self-accompanying solo. George, that's a good question. I'll write that one down. We'll get to that for sure. And then I'll get to Lee's other questions. So Lee, sonnets. We'll talk about that in a second. George, tips for self-accompanying. Great question as well. That'll probably get us through. Heather says, any tricks for getting out of usual go-to chord progressions? What she might mean by that, Heather, is... 1, 4, and 5. It's a blues tune. It's a rock and roll tune. It's a country song, and it just has G, C, and D. And maybe you throw an E minor in. Who knows, right? There's great ways to get out of your head and try to do different things. One of the great ways to try and come up with new chord progressions, pick up another instrument. Pick up another instrument. Who knows? I remember this joke. I'm going to grab this right now because I've told this in this before. Ray Wiley, Hubbard. There's my first. I haven't done a ton of name drops on this one, but one name drop is Ray Wiley. He said, man, I got tired of the same old progressions. I picked up a mandolin. Now all of a sudden... He said, all of a sudden I'm writing sea chanties. I just cracked up. I started laughing so hard. The way he was getting out of his head was picking up an instrument he didn't know how to play, putting the same chords around it, just learning a couple of new chords, and then going back to guitar, and all of a sudden, he's got new ideas for things to play. I highly recommend that. I write very... Oh, sorry about the pixelation. Hopefully everything will come back. Is that just on Facebook? Okay, hopefully the picture's okay. coming up with new, using another instrument to try to come up with new progressions, right? Different stuff on a ukulele, right? Ukulele, excuse me. Michael would make me say ukulele. I write very differently on piano than I write on guitar. That's one really, really great way to do it. I write really, really differently with just a notebook than I do with a guitar or a piano. And I'm not a great piano player, but playing those chords, finding other keys, it's great. Put your guitar in alternate tuning and slap the cable on someplace and beat the soup out of your guitar until something different comes out. It's a lot of fun, and it's a great way to find different chords. One person that I used to play for, who's not, most of the people that I've played with over the years, I've been very, very lucky. Before I started my solo career at the ripe age of 43, they all were really good guitar players. It didn't matter if it was Joe Ely or Eliza Gilkison. These are great guitar players, and that will lead to my next thing for George about self-accompanying. They were great at self-accompanying and making things interesting on their guitar if they had to play solo. But because of that, there were some people that I played that weren't technically great guitar players, but they came up with really, really, really cool stuff because they were fearless about just sticking their fingers down. I heard Elliott Smith talking about this on a video once, the late Elliott Smith. He'd say, I just put my fingers down and I try and find things. He doesn't care what they're called. He doesn't care about the theory. He just looks for something that sounds a little different. The beginning of that song that I played by Stephen Bruton. I mean, essentially that's like an E minor, a D, and a C, right? But it's like, what a beautiful thing, So if you're having trouble and you're like, man, I just want to get out of the same rut, try just moving your hand up and down the neck until you hit something that works. It doesn't have to have a cool name. You don't have to know how to name it to make it work in a song. It doesn't really matter. That's called planing, like Plane, like maybe like a flamenco guitarist would do. Planing chords, finding different places where they sound really great up the neck, even though it's just an old shape. Write a song right off of that. You just take an E chord, scoot it up the neck a little bit, boom, you got this like a really cool sus chord. Be fearless in trying out other chords. Be fearless in moving your hands around the neck and just trying to find something. A lot of guitar players out there that may not know exactly how to tell you what they're doing. They just put their hand down and found something, and that was it. So Heather, I hope that helps a little bit. And that brings me to George, who said, do you have some tips for self-accompanying? Here's some tips for self-accompanying, George. I'm glad you asked about this. I did an opener for a cat named Hayes Carl before I was out on the road, and he had an open date, and I don't know if we had the same booking agent. No, we don't have the same booking agent, or didn't at the time. So I got an opener for him. And I sat on the side of the stage because he wanted to get me up at the end of the night to play and sing with him on a song or play. So at the end of the set, I came up and I was listening, and I was like, man, I've always liked Hayes' songs. Hayes not known as like a major picker. Not that he's bad, but I mean, it's just like you think songwriter when you think of Hayes Carl. He was really, really, really good at, he had something worked out for every song for when he wasn't singing. And it could be really simple. That's not what Hayes played, but if you've got C and G and D and you're just kind of outlining the notes, yeah, Hayes is such a great songwriter. Absolutely. And when you're self-accompanying, if you want to know really how to make it interesting, I would say come up with something for those. Don't just beat the soup out of the chords during the solos, you know? Like if you're playing a song and it's like... All I did was just play the same chords, come up with a finger picking or like a little strum pattern, and then played it on every chord the exact same way. And it's more interesting than here comes the solo and I'm... Although some songs might call for that. Another thing that you could do really, really great for those parts when you're self-accompanying to make the song seem interesting, Paul Cawthon will... hey, Richard, how you doing, buddy? Hope work is treating you well. Paul Cawthon has this thing he's been doing where just like all of a sudden, I never used to see him do it, but then when he goes out, so he'll whistle and he'll go ooh, 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 during the and it's like off the mic and it's spooky and it fits his music. What a cool thing to do to give the audience a little break, even if you don't know how to do like a super, super fancy chord melody with your guitar and stuff. If you don't know how to... If you're not doing that, then why not be like... I love it when people do that kind of thing. And then I would just say, really, 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 if you're worried about self-accompaniment and you want to do it better, keep it interesting, sing, play melodies, keep it simple, doesn't have to be fancy. And that was one of the things I loved when I watched Hayes. Every song, he knew what to do. It wasn't fancy, and he would joke and say, oh, I can't play anything fancy. I'm sure he could if he tried. He's just there to play songs. He's keeping it simple. How cool is that? So, George, I hope that answers the question a little bit. As far as self-accompanying and tips for it, other tips are, let me give you just one bit more on that because we have a little bit of time here. Learning how to finger pick is really, really, really great. Being able to just go from strumming to finger picking. And there's so many different ways you can do it. I have a song that I wrote with my friend Jana Pokop that I particularly love doing with the sound of my fingers. And so no matter where I am, I don't use finger picks. That song is called The Bottom Line, and I don't like the way it sounds with picks. It's too clanky, right? It's too percussive. Whereas other songs that I have, like, I'm so low I gotta look up to see my shoes. I'd much rather play that with picks and be able to... a couple of finger picks, right? Other songs you want to play just strumming. Other songs you want to play, you know, Teresa. I would say if you're working on self-accompanying and you want to get better at it, rhythm, timing, and tone and tune are your friends. Keeping it simple and having some different kind of ways that you could play the song. Also consider playing the song in different tunings or different capo positions. If you understand caged, C-A-G-E-D, and all of those shapes, C, A, G, E, and D, almost everything on the guitar comes from one of those shapes. So let's say I got a song in E, but I don't think that it really, really works. Or let's do this one instead. I got a song in C sharp, and I don't want to play bar chords. The obvious thing we could do is just put a capo right on and play it this way. Hey Kate, welcome. So basically I just figured out a different position to play the chords in it. They sound totally different. Maybe I want to finger pick it instead. The other thing I can do is play it out of a different position. So I put that on the first fret. So what we did was we took a song that was in C sharp that basically goes 1, 5, 6, 4. And we played it open with the big bar chords. And then we played it on the 4th fret, sort of out of A position, meaning you're playing an A chord for your 1 chord. And then we played it off the 1st fret. The shape just looking like C. They all sound different. So hopefully, George, that answers your question just a wee bit regarding what to do for self-accompaniment. I hope that kind of answered your question. Kate, if you're here, I got time for at least one more question. We're going to be on here for about 3 more minutes. Lee asked if I have ever written, we talked about how we like Shakespeare and things that were non-musical, that were influences. I do like Shakespeare quite a bit. I'm a nerd for the bard, but I haven't. I think it would be really, really interesting to try, and I know people have done art songs that way, sort of like pseudo-opera stuff. All right, George. Good stuff. Okay. You listen to your mama, okay? She's making you clean. You can come back later. This will be on Awesome Music TV's channel, and it will be up where you can go back and watch it. All the sonnets end with a couplet, 2 lines that are just the same. So it'd be really, really interesting musically. Maybe it would have to be a Dylan-esque kind of song if you were going to write it, because it'd be like a long verse. That would be a super, super fun. I challenge everybody here, take a Shakespeare sonnet and try and make a song out of it. And also, don't be afraid to just rewrite it. Who cares? The Bard Opera, I'm sure it's been done. It has to have been done already, right? But for a sonnet, I know art songs for sure. I've heard that way. But, I wouldn't have to go far. I mean, I would just listen to some Towns anyway. If you listen to some Towns thing, and you'd be able to get a good vibe of what works. All right, everybody. So I think that right around 11:58:30, I am going to be signing off. And so I just want to say thank you to everybody. Once again, see all the info right here. big thanks to Austin Music TV on the channel. And big thanks to Sheila Steele and everybody over there. Thank you to all of you for being on Twitter, Periscope, YouTube, and Facebook. And message me if you have more questions. And I sure appreciate you all being here. These were great questions today. Who knows, maybe next week we'll have our first guest. And I just want to say more than anything, it's so nice to be able to have, something to do in this time when I can't get across the border. And I've been having a blast doing this kind of things. Thank you all so much. I'm just going to play some outro music, and I will see you all next time.